Betrayal doesn't announce itself. It doesn't slam a door or scream in your face. It slips in quietly, through a dinner not eaten, a laugh that feels too forced, a message not meant for your eyes. And once you see it, nothing looks the same again. I still remember that rainy Tuesday evening when my world collapsed. The dinner was getting cold on the table. Rosemary chicken with mashed potatoes, Nathan's favorite, as I stared at my phone reading the text message over and over again until the words blurred through my tears. I'm sorry, Claire. We never meant to hurt you. Nathan and I have fallen in love. We're leaving for Vancouver tonight. Please try to forgive us someday. Amanda, my husband of 8 years and my best friend since college, gone together. Just like that, I sank to the kitchen floor, still wearing the new dress I'd bought specially for our anniversary dinner. Funny how your brain fixates on irrelevant details during trauma. I remember thinking I should have gotten the receipt for the dress. Could I still return it? God, what a stupid thing to worry about when your life is imploding. That was 6 months ago. I'm different now. Stronger, I think. Though there are still moments when I wake up reaching for Nathan's warmth beside me, only to touch cold sheets and remember everything all over again. I should probably introduce myself properly. I'm Claire Morrison, 36, a marketing strategist living in Seattle. Well, I was a marketing strategist. Now we'll get to that. Nathan and I met during my final year at the University of Toronto. He was this charismatic engineering major with ambitious plans and a smile that made everyone in the room feel special, me included. We dated for 2 years before getting married in a beautiful ceremony overlooking Lake Ontario. Amanda Chen was my maid of honor, my ride or die since freshman year, when we bonded over terrible dorm food and midterm anxiety. She was the extrovert to my introvert, the spontaneous spirit to my careful planning, the person who held my hair back when I got food poisoning, who stayed up all night helping me prepare for job interviews. She knew everything about me, including exactly how to destroy me. Apparently, the signs were there. I guess, if I'm being honest with myself, which I'm trying to be these days, I saw them exchanging looks. At our dinner parties, I noticed how Amanda suddenly developed an interest in Nathan's startup investments when she'd previously called that stuff rich people's gambling. I caught the way her hand lingered on his shoulder just a bit too long. But I dismissed it all because who wants to believe their husband and best friend would betray them like that? The night they left, they took more than just their belongings. Nathan cleared out our joint savings account, $51,000. We'd been saving for a down payment on a house in the suburbs. He left me with our apartment lease, the monthly payments on his luxury SUV that I never even drove, and a stack of credit card bills I didn't know existed. Oh, and a half-eaten anniversary cake in the fridge that I ended up throwing at the wall in a moment of rage. I'm not particularly proud of that. They're probably laughing at me right now. I remember telling my sister Melissa on the phone that night, my voice hoarse from crying. Poor, stupid, trusting Claire. Always the responsible one. Always the planner. Always so boring. Because that's what hurt almost as much as the betrayal. The thought that maybe I'd brought this on myself. That I wasn't exciting enough, adventurous enough, sexy enough to keep my husband interested. That perhaps Amanda, with her spontaneous trips and revealing outfits and loud, infectious laugh, had simply offered what I couldn't. For the first few weeks, I barely functioned. I called in sick to work so many times that my boss, Darren, finally showed up at my apartment with soup and a sympathetic ear. I lost weight, slept at odd hours, and spent way too much time stalking Amanda's Instagram, torturing myself with their new Vancouver life, beach sunsets, trendy restaurants, matching sunglasses. They looked so happy, so carefree, like they hadn't left a broken person behind in Seattle. You should sue him, my sister insisted. He cleaned out your account. That's financial fraud. You need to expose them both on social media, my colleague Naomi urged. Show everyone what kind of people they really are. Everyone had opinions about what I should do, revenge fantasies, public shaming, legal action. But what none of them knew, what nobody knew, was that I'd been keeping secrets of my own during my marriage to Nathan. The kind of secrets that change everything. You see, about 3 years into our marriage, I discovered something about Nathan that he'd hidden from everyone, including me. Something that would eventually turn the tables on both him and Amanda in ways they never could have imagined. At the time, I chose to stay quiet, to protect him even. I remember sitting on the floor of our bathroom, holding those medical records and shaking hands, tears streaming down my face. Not from anger, but from grief. Grief for the family I thought we'd have, for the conversations we'd never had. I didn't tell anyone, not even my sister. I carried that secret like a second skin, clinging to the hope that maybe one day Nathan would trust me enough to tell the truth himself. But now those secrets would become my unexpected salvation. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't something you plan at all. Sometimes justice comes from simply letting people's own choices catch up with them. And for Nathan and Amanda, that reckoning was already in motion. They just didn't know it yet. Our marriage wasn't perfect, whose is? But I truly believed we were solid. Nathan traveled often for his software consulting business, while I built my career in marketing strategy. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our future plans. We were trying for a baby, although month after month my period arrived with disappointing regularity. "It'll happen when it's meant to happen," Nathan would say, kissing my forehead. No rush. Amanda, meanwhile, was a constant in our lives. Single by choice, she'd bounce between freelance gigs and passionate flings, bringing color and chaos into our more structured existence. She'd crash on our couch after breakups, join us for Sunday brunches, and vacation with us in Whistler every summer. "You guys are my relationship goals," she'd say, raising her wine glass to toast us. "Nathan is one of the good ones, Claire. Never let him go." The irony of those words still makes me nauseous. Looking back, I can pinpoint when things changed. Last September, Nathan returned from a business trip to Denver. Different, somehow distracted. He started working late, taking calls in the bathroom with the shower running, password protecting his laptop. Classic signs, right? But I trusted him. I didn't want to be the suspicious wife. I didn't want to admit that something was shifting beneath the surface of our life together. So I lied to myself. I told myself he was just stressed, that Amanda was just being Amanda, that everything was fine, even when my stomach twisted every time their eyes met. God, I was so stupid. Then came Thanksgiving at my parents' house in Portland. I walked into the guest bedroom to find Amanda and Nathan standing unusually close, falling silent when I entered. She was adjusting his tie, their faces just inches apart. "Just helping Nate look presentable for your dad," she laughed, but stepped away too quickly. At Christmas, I noticed Amanda had bought Nathan an expensive watch. Just a friend gift, while I received a generic scented candle set. By New Year's Eve, they were exchanging glances across the room at parties, having inside jokes I wasn't part of. Each time I caught them sharing those glances, it felt like someone had taken a pin to the fragile balloon of my world. But I smiled through it. I laughed at their jokes. I even thanked Amanda for the candle. Because I wasn't ready to admit what I already knew. Still, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Then came that business trip to San Diego in February. Nathan said he'd be gone for 3 days. On day 2, I received a call from his credit card company flagging unusual activity. A $500 dinner charge at an upscale restaurant in Napa Valley. When I called the restaurant to inquire about possible fraud, the hostess cheerfully informed me that Mr. Morrison and his wife had enjoyed their anniversary dinner and wine tasting. His wife. In Napa. When I was in Seattle, that same night, Amanda posted an Instagram story of a sunset tagged in Napa Valley before quickly deleting it. She claimed it was a throwback Thursday, when I casually mentioned it on a Tuesday. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I became a detective in my own marriage, searching for evidence while hoping desperately not to find any. And throughout it all, there was Amanda calling me daily, checking in with unusual frequency. "You seem stressed. Claire, is everything okay with you and Nate?" The ultimate betrayal came 3 months later, 2 days before our anniversary, when I overheard a phone conversation between them. I'd come home early from work with a migraine and was lying down in our bedroom when Nathan called her, thinking I was still at the office. "She doesn't suspect anything," he said quietly. "We'll tell her after the anniversary dinner. Have you found an apartment in San Jose yet?" I lay there frozen, listening to them plan their exit strategy, how they'd break the news to me, how they'd already been transferring money to new accounts, how Nathan had accepted a job offer in British Columbia that he'd never mentioned to me. The pain was sharp, but what struck me even harder was the calmness in their voices, their casualness while discussing the implosion of my life like it was some business deal. My head throbbed from the migraine, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. I was lying in the bed we'd shared for nearly a decade, listening to my husband make plans to vanish from it. "She'll be devastated," Amanda said, having the audacity to sound concerned. "Maybe we should wait a bit longer." "If we wait for the perfect time, we'll never leave," Nathan replied. "Claire's strong. She'll be fine, eventually." Fine. Eventually. As if 8 years of marriage could be dismissed so easily. As if I were some phase they'd outgrown. What they didn't realize is that while they were planning their grand escape, I was having a revelation of my own. You see, 3 years earlier, I'd made a discovery about Nathan that changed everything. Something I'd kept to myself out of love and loyalty. During our second year of marriage, when we started casually trying for a baby, I'd noticed something odd in Nathan's medical records while organizing our insurance paperwork. A surgery from when he was 14. One he had never mentioned. Curious, I dug deeper and found older records his mother had given us after we married. Nathan had suffered a serious childhood accident, a sports injury that resulted in complications requiring surgery. The medical report stated in clinical terms what the outcome meant: permanent sterility. My husband was incapable of having biological children. He'd known this since he was a teenager. Yet he'd enthusiastically discussed baby names with me, suggested we convert the guest room to a nursery when the time comes, comforted me each month when pregnancy tests came back negative. Every time I cried in the bathroom, thinking I'd failed again to conceive, he was there, playing the part of the supportive husband when he knew the truth all along, that I could never get pregnant, not with him. It wasn't just betrayal. It was cruelty dressed up as care. "We'll keep trying," he'd say, holding me close. I never confronted him. Perhaps that was my mistake. I told myself he'd share this truth when he was ready, that maybe he was researching options like adoption or sperm donors before getting my hopes up. I convinced myself it came from a place of shame or fear, not deception. So I waited, and waited, for 3 years. 3 years of hope built on a lie. Now, as I lay in our bed listening to him plan his new life with my best friend, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't going to scream or throw things or beg him to stay. No. Something much more powerful was taking shape in my mind. Because sometimes knowledge is power, and I knew things about Nathan that even Amanda didn't know, things that would eventually catch up with both of them. That evening, I started making calls of my own. To my lawyer, to my bank, to a private investigator I'd consulted briefly when I first found those medical records, and to a cybersecurity expert who owed me a favor. While they plotted their British Columbia escape, I began securing my future. I just had to wait for the right moment. And ironically, that moment would come precisely when they thought they'd won. The night they left. My anniversary night. I sat alone in our apartment, surrounded by the remnants of the dinner I'd prepared, feeling hollow. Yet strangely clear-headed. The initial shock had given way to something else. Determination. "Enough tears," I whispered to myself, washing away my mascara streaks. Time to get strategic. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began a systematic inventory of what Nathan had taken and what he'd left behind. The joint savings account emptied, except for $172.43. The credit cards, maxed out with charges I didn't recognize. The investment portfolio we'd built together. Access blocked, with my emails to our financial advisor bouncing back. Every detail felt like a blow. Each new discovery chipped away at the illusion I'd lived in for years. I wasn't just left behind. I was robbed blind by the man I once called my partner. But Nathan had made a critical mistake in his hurry to disappear with Amanda. He'd forgotten about the filing cabinet in our guest room closet, the one where I kept hard copies of everything, including those medical records documenting his sterility. More importantly, he'd forgotten about the safe deposit box at Cascadia First National that contained backup copies of all our financial records, including evidence of the side business he thought I didn't know about. a slightly less than legal cryptocurrency consulting operation where he helped wealthy clients move money through offshore accounts. Reading through those documents again was like holding a weapon I didn't want to use, but might need to. Each piece of paper was proof that Nathan wasn't just careless or selfish. He was dangerous in ways I'd never truly understood until now. Men like Nathan always think they're the smartest person in the room. My lawyer Yvonne said during our emergency meeting that week. That's their weakness. Yvonne was a divorce attorney I'd met through a women's networking event years earlier. I'd kept her card, never imagining I'd need it. I don't just want a divorce, I told her, sliding the folder of documents across her desk. I want protection. She raised an eyebrow as she flipped through the pages. This is quite a collection, Claire. How long have you been gathering this? I haven't been gathering anything, I clarified. I've just always been organized. It's my nature to keep records. Well, your nature might just save you, she replied, and possibly cause significant complications for your husband. While Yvonne began filing preliminary paperwork, I focused on immediate survival. I froze the remaining credit cards before Nathan could drain them further. I contacted our landlord to explain the situation and negotiate a temporary reduction in rent until I could find a smaller place. I sold the ridiculous SUV Nathan had insisted on buying, and that I was now stuck with payments for, and purchased a modest used Honda with the proceeds. It was humiliating to trade in the life I'd helped build for scraps. But in those small, decisive steps, I felt something unexpected. Strength. There was a strange empowerment in each action, each call made, each decision taken alone. For the first time in weeks, I was doing more than reacting. I was building something again, even if it was just a foundation to stand on. Each night, I'd collapse into bed exhausted from the day's logistics, only to lie awake, wondering what Amanda and Nathan were doing at that exact moment. Were they on a beach somewhere? Moving into their new place? Making love in a British Columbia king-size bed while laughing about how easily they'd escaped? That image haunted me, lodged in the back of my mind like a splinter I couldn't remove. I hated how easily my thoughts betrayed my resolve. Those thoughts threatened to drag me back into despair. But then I'd remember the medical records, the business documents, the offshore accounts, and I'd feel that same strange calm wash over me again. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was control, and that was something I hadn't felt in a long time. 3 weeks after they left, I received the first Instagram message from Amanda. I know you probably hate me, and you have every right to, but I hope someday you can understand that some things just happen. Nate and I never planned this. I stared at those words for nearly an hour, drafting and deleting responses. Eventually, I settled on something simple. I hope you both find what you're looking for. Then I added, by the way, has Nate mentioned wanting children? You should definitely discuss that soon. A small seed planted. Nothing more. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. I negotiated a lateral move at my company to a different department to avoid the pitying looks from colleagues. I found a smaller apartment across town and slowly created a new space that contained no memories of either of them. Each room, each wall felt like a silent declaration. This is mine, and it will not be tainted. I joined a support group for people dealing with betrayal trauma, where I met Kesha, who would become a true friend, unlike the one I'd lost. What do you want most right now? Kesha asked me during one of our coffee meetups. Revenge. I considered this carefully. Not revenge. Exactly, I replied. Karma. Maybe justice. I want them to face consequences for their actions, not because I inflict them, but because that's how the universe works. And if the universe needs a little nudge? Kesha asked with a slight smile. That's when I told her about the next phase of my plan. The seeds I'd planted were beginning to sprout, and I was ready to move forward. First, I'd hired a cybersecurity specialist to monitor Nathan's business activities from afar. Not to hack anything, that would be illegal, but to track public information about his new ventures in British Columbia. Information that might be useful to certain regulatory agencies, if necessary. There was something incredibly empowering about reclaiming control, not with anger, but with intelligence. I didn't want to destroy him. I wanted to let the truth do that for me. Second, Through an anonymous email account, I'd sent Amanda links to articles about hereditary health conditions in my family that weren't actually present, suggesting serious genetic disorders that might affect any children she might have with Nathan. Just enough to make her insist on genetic counseling if they decided to have a baby. It was subtle. Cruel, maybe, but calculated. I wasn't trying to scare her. I just wanted her to pause, to question the foundation of her new life. And third, most importantly, I'd begun systematically documenting and reporting the questionable cryptocurrency transactions Nathan had been facilitating. Not directly, I wasn't looking to go to jail as collateral damage, but through carefully anonymized tips to the relevant authorities. The beauty of it, I explained to Kesha, is that I don't have to do anything vindictive. I just have to let Nathan be Nathan. His own actions will do the rest. And Amanda? She asked. I shrugged. Amanda made her choice. She chose him over 15 years of friendship. Now she gets to discover exactly who she chose. The old Claire might have wept at that thought. But this version of me, scarred but stronger, had no more tears to spare. As spring turned to summer, I watched from afar as Nathan launched his new consulting firm in Vancouver. Their social media presence was aggressively perfect. Sunset yacht parties, champagne brunches, matching outfits at charity galas. Nathan had always been obsessed with appearances. I used to find comfort in that image, the polished couple, the curated life. Now, it looked hollow, staged, a performance for an audience that no longer included me. Then in late July, I noticed something interesting. Amanda's posts became less frequent. When she did post, she looked tired, strained. The captions were shorter, less exuberant. Nathan, meanwhile, was tagging himself at business meetings in Las Vegas, Miami, New York, always without her. Something was changing in Paradise, and I found myself settling in, preparing to watch what happened next. Not with malice, but with the patient certainty of someone who knows exactly how this story ends. Because while they thought they were writing their happily ever after, I knew better. The third act was just beginning. The text from Amanda came on a warm August evening as I was watering the herbs on my new apartment balcony. I need to talk to you, please. It's important. 6 words that set my heart racing. After 5 months of silence, except for that one Instagram exchange, here she was, reaching out. My hands trembled as I set down my phone without replying. Even now, after everything, part of me reacted instinctively, still expecting the best from the person who'd given me the worst. Later that night, after a glass of wine and a long bath, I finally responded. I'm listening. Her reply came instantly. Can we talk? Voice call, please, Claire? I hesitated, then pressed the call button before I could change my mind. Claire? Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Uncertain. What do you want, Amanda? I kept my tone neutral, fighting the conflicting emotions her voice triggered. Anger, hurt, but also that unwelcome flicker of concern for someone who had once been like a sister to me. I'm pregnant. The world seemed to stop. Of all the scenarios I'd imagined for this conversation, this wasn't one of them. I sat down heavily on my couch. Congratulations, I managed, my mind racing. I assume Nathan is thrilled. Her breath caught. That's complicated. He doesn't know yet. I just found out yesterday. And you're calling your ex-best friend whose husband you stole because I'm scared, Claire. Her voice cracked. Things with Nate aren't what I thought they'd be. He's different here. Controlling, distant, working all the time. When he is home, he's on edge, checking his phone constantly. Something's wrong, but he won't talk to me about it. There was panic beneath her words now, that desperate, trembling tone I recognized from nights when she'd called me crying over breakups. Except this time there was no comfort to offer. I closed my eyes, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and genuine sadness. That sounds difficult, I said carefully, but I'm not sure what this has to do with me. Remember that message you sent about discussing children with Nate? You knew something, didn't you? There's something I should know. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd both dreaded and anticipated. Amanda, did Nathan ever mention having surgery as a teenager after a sports injury? No, she said slowly. What kind of surgery? The kind that makes it impossible for him to father children. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could almost hear her mind spinning, reaching back through recent memories, trying to stitch together a narrative that suddenly no longer made sense. "That's not possible," she finally whispered. "I'm pregnant." The doctor confirmed it. "I'm not questioning that you're pregnant, Amanda. I'm telling you Nathan can't be the father." What followed was the sound of someone's world collapsing. Ragged breathing, a muffled sob, the creak of furniture as she presumably sat down. And in that moment, I felt both justice and sorrow weave together. A strange, twisted sense of closure mixed with compassion I wasn't sure she deserved. "How do you know this?" she finally asked. "I found his medical records 3 years ago. He never told me." Amanda let that sink in. "My husband let me believe we were trying for a baby for years, knowing it was impossible." Each word was heavier than the last. A confession, a wound, a truth that had festered in silence for too long. "Oh God," she whispered. "Oh my God." I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. Instead, I felt hollowed out, tired of the whole situation. "Who else could be the father?" I asked gently. "There was someone, just once. A client of Nate's who was in town about 2 months ago. Nate was in Las Vegas again, and I was lonely, and—" She trailed off. "It was a mistake. One night, I've been so careful with Nate, I didn't think." The irony was almost too perfect. The woman who had betrayed me with my husband had now betrayed him in the same way. "You need to tell him," I said. "He'll leave me," she whispered. "I have nothing here, Claire. No friends, no job. He controls all the money." There was fear in her voice, the kind that comes from realizing too late just how little power you truly have when you put your life in the wrong hands. Sound familiar? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. She was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. We were awful to you." And for a second, I caught a glimpse of the girl I once shared secrets and wine with. The one who'd once promised never to hurt me. 2 days later, Amanda called again, hysterical. She'd told Nathan about the pregnancy, initially presenting it as happy news. His first reaction had been confusion, then suspicion. He demanded a paternity test, revealing his sterility in the process. When confronted with his years-long deception about his condition, he deflected by focusing entirely on her infidelity. "He kicked me out," she sobbed. "I'm at a hotel. He's frozen all the accounts. He said if I try to come back, he'll call the police and have me arrested for theft. The apartment is in his name. The car is in his name. Everything." I listened silently, remembering my own shock that night 6 months ago. But unlike me, Amanda had chosen her fall. And now she was facing it, alone. "I don't know what to do," she continued. "I have nowhere to go." Part of me wanted to hang up, to let her experience the full consequences of her choices. But another part, perhaps the better part, remembered the friendship we'd once had. "There's a women's center in Vancouver called New Beginnings," I said finally. "They help women in crisis situations. I've already called them. They're expecting you." "You? You're helping me? Why?" "I'm not doing it for you, Amanda. I'm doing it because it's who I am." Meanwhile, Nathan was facing challenges of his own. The anonymous tips I'd provided about his cryptocurrency activities had triggered an investigation. His business accounts were under scrutiny. Several major clients had pulled out after receiving mysterious emails detailing his history of financial mismanagement. I learned all this because in a desperate attempt to access funds, he tried to hack into what remained of our joint investment account, triggering the security protocols I'd established with my bank. When the bank called to alert me, they mentioned that multiple attempts had been made from British Columbia IP addresses over the past week. "Miss Morrison, we're concerned about persistent attempts to access your accounts," the security specialist explained. "Would you like us to refer this to our fraud department for potential criminal investigation?" I thought about it for a moment. "Yes," I said finally. "I think that would be best." 3 weeks later, the British Columbia Department of Financial Protection announced a formal investigation into Nathan's consulting firm. That same day, I received divorce papers from my lawyer, showing Nathan had finally responded to our filing, agreeing to all terms and requesting no alimony or division of assets beyond what I'd already outlined. It was over. He had no fight left. That evening, I sat on my balcony, watching the sunset, feeling a complex emotion I couldn't quite name. Not happiness, exactly. Not vindication either. Perhaps it was simply peace. The quiet understanding that justice had found its way without my having to become someone I wasn't in the process. It's been 18 months since that night when Amanda called to tell me she was pregnant. Life has taken some unexpected turns for all of us. After staying at the Women's Center for several weeks, Amanda eventually relocated to Portland, where her cousin lived. She had a baby boy, named him Leo, and started working at a marketing agency specializing in sustainable businesses. We're not friends again. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. But we exchange occasional texts. She sends photos of Leo sometimes. He has her eyes. Nathan's downfall came faster than even I anticipated. The investigation into his business practices uncovered extensive fraud. He'd been running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme, using new client investments to generate the impressive returns he showcased to attract more clients. When his assets were frozen during the investigation, the whole operation collapsed. He avoided jail time through a plea deal, but lost his business license and was ordered to pay substantial restitution to his clients. Last I heard, he was working as a sales associate at a luxury car dealership in Phoenix. A humbling change for someone who once flew first class and stayed at 5-star hotels. As for me, I'm thriving in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days after they left. The financial discipline I'd maintained throughout my marriage and the careful documentation of Nathan's misconduct meant that I emerged from our divorce with my personal assets intact and a substantial settlement. I used part of it to launch my own financial consultancy, specializing in helping women achieve financial independence after divorce or widowhood. Morrison Financial Empowerment now has offices in Seattle and New York, with 15 employees and a waiting list of clients. There's a certain poetic justice in using the knowledge I gained from Nathan's deception to help other women protect themselves. I sold my story to a major women's magazine, anonymized of course, which led to speaking engagements and eventually a book deal. The Liberation of Elimination, Finding Strength When People Exit Your Life, coming out next spring. On a personal level, I've made peace with what happened. Therapy helped, as did the supportive community I built around me. I date occasionally, though I'm in no rush to remarry. My life feels full in ways it never did when I was trying to hold together a marriage with someone who didn't value honesty or commitment. Sometimes people ask if I regret not exposing Nathan sooner, if I wish I'd confronted him about his sterility when I first discovered it. The truth is complicated. Had I confronted him then, perhaps we could have addressed the deception through therapy. Or maybe we would have divorced amicably, without the pain of betrayal with Amanda. But I've come to believe that relationships built on fundamental dishonesty are destined to unravel eventually. By keeping his secret, Nathan revealed his true character, to himself as much as to me. And in the end, that revelation set us both free, albeit through a painful process. The most valuable lesson I've learned is that our power often lies not in dramatic confrontations or elaborate revenge schemes, but in the quiet strength of knowing our own worth. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is step aside and let natural consequences unfold. Last week, I received a final text from Amanda that summarized everything perfectly. I thought I was choosing excitement and passion when I left with Nate. What I didn't understand was that reliability and honesty are far more valuable than excitement. You were always the strong one, Claire. I just couldn't see it. She's right. Strength isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's simply the quiet persistence of continuing to live with integrity, even when others don't. It's the patience to wait for truth to emerge rather than forcing it. And it's the wisdom to know that, ultimately, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so full and meaningful that the people who hurt you become irrelevant to your story. That's what I've done. And while I wouldn't wish this journey on anyone, I'm grateful for where it's led me. Because sometimes, the worst betrayal can lead to the most beautiful revelation, that you were enough all along. Dear friend, there are moments in life when the ground beneath you cracks without warning. Not with a dramatic explosion, but with the quiet cruelty of a message, a betrayal, or a truth you didn't want to see. What happened to Claire could happen to any of us. Not because we are weak, but because we choose to believe in love, in loyalty, and in the people we hold closest. But in that crack, in that collapse, something else can begin. Clarity. As the Stoics say, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Claire spent nights haunted by what-ifs, tormented by the images in her mind. But when she stepped into the reality, into action, into truth, she found power. She didn't become vindictive. She didn't destroy. She rebuilt. And in doing so, she discovered a strength that betrayal couldn't erase. Sometimes, the universe doesn't need your revenge. It just needs your patience. Because people always reveal themselves. And truth has a way of catching up, no matter how far someone runs. So if you're hurting, friend, take heart. You don't need to retaliate. You don't need to shout. You just need to know your worth, protect your peace, and step forward with quiet resolve. Because the most powerful kind of strength is the kind that doesn't need to be loud. Keep walking, keep healing, keep rising. Live with clarity, rise with purpose, and remember, your peace is your power. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Let's grow this space where real stories and real strength are honored.